course. Oh, there. Okay, so that took a little longer than normal, but great bass playing on that song.
Oh, well, thanks.
You know, uh, thank you for spending some time with me today, and talking with me about all your bass playing in your career. And when I was talking to Russ, and he said, um, you know, uh, this last record, and I said, who plays on the record? And he said, Jerry Watts. And I said, oh, I'd love to have him on my show. And he said, well, I just got off the phone with him. That's great. Now, so a couple of questions.
Uh-huh.
Is school going to start? How's you teach at the Los Angeles College of Music, and what's the fall semester looking like for you?
Yeah, I'm actually the chair of the bass department there, and
Huh?
well, there's a plan in place to go back. There's kind of a hybrid plan where we'd be on campus part of the time, and then part of the time remote. And they've got a great protocol set up. I'm pretty happy with their reopening plan. But still, we have to see how this rolls. So we're poised for any eventuality. How's that?
I see. So, are you going to have, when you get together? Are you going to have some ensembles being able to play together in a distance sort of setting?
Well, that's the biggest rub, is not being able to play together and to play in ensembles and to teach and interact with students, in that context. So yeah, they have a great, like I said, they have a great set of protocols in terms of the schedule of the school, and the schedule of the classes and the time between to sanitize. And the president of the school has gotten these UV sanitizers that they cycle the air and sanitize the air in specific room in each room, and then they have these UV wands and UV fogging, and it's pretty well thought out. So should we find ourselves back there, I'm pretty confident that it will be no one will even catch a cold.
Is it going to be like Star Trek when you walk through the thing and this you get desanitized and walk into the room?
Actually, I have to give it up to our president, Tom Ellsbury, and the vice president, Aaron Workman. They came up, I think, with a great reopening plan, and part of that will involve an app, where you have to every day fill out a questionnaire on the app and get yourself approved before you can even come on campus, and then they'll take everyone's temperature. I think they got somewhere upwards of 900 masks. I think they say LACM across the front. And yeah, so everyone will have a mask. There's a variety of protocols in place for social distancing, ensemble playing, how that's all going to happen. And in particular, the people that have been impacted the most are drummers, because they have such a challenge with remote learning. I mean, if you're a student in an apartment, right? Well, how are you gonna where are you playing drums when you can't go to a rehearsal studio? The city of Pasadena, our school happens to be in Pasadena, even though it's super close to it's within the the city of Los Angeles. It's still, they have their own rules, and no one's been allowed to set foot on campus yet. So yeah, so it's been tough for them. Also, singers, horn players. So they've worked out a pretty good plan. I'm pretty happy with it.
I've talked with a lot of guys about this since all of this has started. How are we going to learn as musicians in this world where you can't get together? And me being before I started doing sound, I was a drummer. That's how I made my living.
Right.
And I learn more from a drummer standpoint, sitting behind the drummer and watching him and feeling what it feels like, and hear the dynamic range in the playing from the instrument itself. And you don't really get all the same stuff seeing it, on screen like this. And is it the same for bass players?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've been since since this all started in March, I've been uh, teaching classes remotely,
Mhm.
and navigating that world. And we're all kind of in the same boat, so we're all figuring it out as we go. I mean, you can put on a brave face, but and you
Yeah.
can kind of deliver the party line, but we're all learning about this, and certainly it's really, yeah, it's a it's a challenge, and that's the best part of teaching for me, is kind of getting to the core of that interactive piece, the feel piece, and being in the room with someone. Yeah, I agree with you. It's nice to sit in the room, sit next to someone, and you can kind of feel what they're doing, right? And it gets, things get a little more nebulous there, because we can deliver data points, and you can watch a million YouTube videos and Instagram videos, and you can have a bunch of data about your instrument, but that doesn't make a musician, not by a long shot. And so, yeah, that's what we're trying to bridge the gap right now, actually.
Yeah. Well, there's something about the body, the human instrument that plays and develops a feel and an emotion. And when you're next to them, you
Hmm.
get a better sense of that, I think, than through just watching TV. I think that's what I get a lot is when a guy's hitting a drum and you can feel what he's doing, a little
Hmm.
bit more than watching. Of course, I mean, there is some stuff you can see when you're watching it, but it's just not the same as when you're in person.
Definitely not. But we've made we've made lemonade out of lemons, and hoping that we're on a quarter system, so we roll all year round. So our fall quarter doesn't start until October. So I'm
Oh,
hoping by then, we're all hoping by then, we'll be able to be back on campus, and
okay.
this will be in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
That's the hope.
So the other thing when all of this, I know Russ, when I had him on, he had just released this record, I think the day before, and you played on that, and that is a magnificent record. I mean, I've been playing that. I go on bike rides and I play it, listen to it, and it's great. So is you've been doing a lot of those kinds of projects since the pandemic. How has all of that worked out for you too?
Yeah, well, it very interestingly is how it's worked out. Yeah, that project was actually recorded a year ago. We all went down to Miami to
Uh-huh.
Criterion Studios, which is if you know your rock and pop and soul history, it was a place in Miami where so much kind of iconic music was recorded. It was pretty thrilling to be there, I have to say. And
Mm,
yeah, just a couple of things that recorded there, like Aretha, Gifted in Black, and it's one of my all-time fave tunes, Rock Steady. So,
yeah,
oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And Clapton, and Bee Gees, and now they've done a ton of rap stuff in the past 10, 15 years. But anyway, for us, super exciting. And by the way, just super exciting, since we're talking about drums, Russ Miller and Giovanni Hidalgo, just being in the studio with those guys is just,
Yeah.
it's it forgave a lot of sins elsewhere in terms of grooves that weren't quite happening.
Oh,
Anyway, to your question, yeah, I've been doing a variety of projects here at home. In fact, just yesterday I finished another track for there's an amazing drummer and a dear friend of mine, Chris Wabich,
mm,
who lives here in LA. He's been doing an album, and so I played on a couple tracks for his record. I just finished one yesterday, and yeah, a whole bunch of other stuff.
so were you set up working from home before this happened? So you were doing a lot of things at home, or did you just kind of pull it together to start working from home?
Yeah, no, I'm at home right now. This is my little home studio. I don't know if you can kind of see
Yeah.
the joint there. Yeah, and I'm set up to record from here. Although it is not my preference right? Because I'm just sitting here by myself is not um, my favorite way to record. Yeah,
No.
I like being with people, and I was really blessed to kind of catch, I guess, what you call the tail end of the big recording era, and I did enough of that to never forget it. But in this time, I've yeah, I've been just working on my chops here. I'm a primarily a Logic guy, and I have UA interface
Mhm.
and so forth. So I've been really just digging in deep to that. And it's been quite a bit of fun.
Well, I want to ask you about how you jumped into this because be- because first, wishful thinking, man, I was really into that music when it came out. I was listening to a lot of that kind of stuff, and you and Garibaldi and the songs on that on those records, man, I love that stuff. And
Wow.
so as I started, reading a little bit more about you, knowing that I was going to talk to you, that's when you had just moved to Los Angeles when you started doing that. Is that true?
Yeah, very shortly after I moved to Los Angeles to go to school, and I did. I went to Cal State Northridge. I had been at William Patterson, yeah, on the East Coast, which is in Patterson,
Mhm.
New Jersey, close to New York City, and then came out here. And yeah, I get out of school, and it was pretty short and pretty. Actually, when I was in school, I met Garibaldi. There was a keyboard player friend of mine, and he had he had jammed with them, and I was like, man, you got to get me over there. And we went over to his house, and we started jamming, and it was kind of a lock. It was just one of those, it was a real super outlier experience. I mean, there was no, if you line it up, there's no reason why I should have been there, but there I was, and
Yeah.
I've had a bunch of that kind of thing happen.
Well, so when you grew up, then you must have grown up being a fan of Tower of Power, same as me, especially because you were from the Bay Area, right?
Actually, I'm not from the Bay Area. I'm from My whole family is from New York City, and I'm from New Jersey. What exit Bell, and
I-
so my family now lives in the Bay Area. They've been there for a long time.
okay.
But when I came out here, I was not, I was aware of Tower of Power, but I wasn't the biggest
Oh,
Tower of Power fan because I didn't like at that time. I kind of didn't like that kind of funk as much as when I was my first years of school on the East Coast. I would go and see Stuff all the time, so I was
oh,
obsessed with Stuff and that kind of New York funk. And this is around the time that Brecker brothers were first putting their stuff out. So I'm talking about Stuff, of course, Gad and Chris Parker,
right.
and all those guys, and yeah, Jean Tropez. I don't know if you know that guy. Was a fantastic guitar player, but he
Uh,
had these bands that they kind of. It was all the session players that you would wind up on those early Sanborn records, same guys. And yeah,
right.
I was really into that, which was not as many notes. So it took me a minute to wrap my head around. Yeah, the kind of I mean, what today we now call, we'd say, oh, fingerstyle funk, and we trace the history as far as bass playing from James Jamerson and
Right.
so Rocco and Paul Jackson and Jocko and so on and so forth.
Right.
Yeah,
So the feel of that music is more spacious and more eighth note, let's say, oriented, and Tower of Power is more 16th. It's like a lot of notes. Would that be the right
that,
thing?
that is correct. And I got schooled on that pretty quick by Mr. Garibaldi.
Right. So then that was your first experience then recording in Los Angeles, or what led to, tell me.
It was this strange thing happened. I actually got out of school, and right away I sent. There was a progressive rock keyboard player named Eddie Jobson, and
Mhm.
he's famous for. Well, I played with Frank Zappa and maybe Jethro Tull, but he started this band called UK that had Bill Bruford, I think, initially, and then Terry Bozzio, right?
Right.
And then he got a deal with Capitol, and he did his first solo record. And I knew the drummer, Michael Barsamonto, who's originally from the Bay Area, and he recommended me. I sent a tape in, and so I went out to New York. And that was my first experience. I was like flown to New York and spent about 2 weeks doing this record, which was just mind-boggling. Because growing up, I was into a lot of different things, but progressive rock music was certainly one of the things that I was really up about. So I was I was in heaven. Yeah, and yeah,
Oh,
that
and
was the first thing I think.
and then the wishful thinking thing, did that open doors for you, or were they just kind of all opening simultaneously? Because when I look at the stuff that you've been doing, a lot
Mhm.
of some guests that I've had on, my Gary Meek and
Oh yeah,
Russ, and all of those guys are playing that that wishful thinking kind of stuff a little
right,
bit.
right.
However, you play big bands and everything too with John DeVersus, so you've got this whole gamut of stuff. What is I'm coming to a question though when
Mhm.
I look at all of your stuff. What is the bulk of your playing that fusion music that requires a knowledge of all styles?
No, I don't think so. Although I'm fascinated by I just like good music, and I like a challenge. I like to jump in the deep end, and so I've really just tried to play every single kind of music that I could get, that I came across, and I still am interested in this. I don't have a big interest in playing what I'm doing what I've already done. To your question, yeah, I certainly love. There's something about the very high level of music that something that demands everything that you've got. I love that, but that's not at all. That wouldn't define me. I don't think at all.
Mm, mm. Well, I was just thinking, because the one tune that I played, I posted on my Facebook page today from Gary,
Oh,
was, that was a pretty
do you remember
one.
the title by
Uh,
chance?
yeah. 1 second, I will tell you, and it is Bosphorus Blues.
Oh wow, yeah.
You,
Yeah, those.
do you remember it? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. It's tricky,
sorry.
tricky and funky, and we were. Yeah, I think that album was produced. The drummer in that band is a great producer, percussionist, Michael Shapiro,
Oh yeah.
and I think he produced that record. This is a little while ago now, so
Mm.
I'd have to double check that. But
It, so, I mean, when I play, I'm just going to play a little bit of it just because I really thought it was pretty good. I've gone, well, that's kind of, I was really into all of that kind of music for a
okay.
while. So
Mhm.
it's fun to talk with you because you played on a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, it looks like to me.
Yeah, I did.
It, and so were you with was it just the circle of musicians that you were kind of in for that? And when somebody said, "Hey, I really need a good bass player," Jerry's the guy.
In wow, good, good. I mean, these are all the kind of the. How did you pull this off? And you know, uh, I'm not sure. A lot of luck, but you know, yeah, I mean, you have to. Consistency is critical. It's not the sexy thing, right? That people want to hear, but you need to be able to deliver. It's a deliverable what we do, right? And it's not it's on demand. And so if you want to think of it that way, and yeah, as in those days, wishful thinking got a lot of airplay. It was a, we were moving. We had a representation by who was that? I don't remember now. Philip Morris? No. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, it was getting some notice, and yeah, and in the local community of players, I started to sub because I could read. And these days, that's not that big of a deal. There are far more, educated, well, overly educated musicians almost, and so it's not that big of a deal. But I developed, I think, a little bit of a reputation that I could come in and just sight read it and deliver the goods. And so that was useful because in those days there was a greater demand for players,
Hmm.
and if someone couldn't make it, right, or someone got sick, or I remember one time I went overseas with somebody because their bass player was Japanese, and like in the last hour they realized he couldn't leave the country and come back because of his visa. So I mean, like in short order, I was like, got a phone call and I was driving to the airport on my way to Europe, and yeah. So anyway, it happened like that. It's word of mouth. It's a word of mouth business, and of course, with social media, that's somewhat different. But basically, you're not cool till someone says you're cool. No one's gonna roll the dice on hiring you, right?
Right.
Until there's a good word.
Right. And so you're a good reader. Now today, everybody needs to be able to read, and
Mhm.
especially doing the work you're doing, to do Russ's songs or tunes, some of the records with John DeVersa, and movie and TV dates that you do. You need to be able to be a really spot on reader, right?
You do. Yeah, it's funny teaching people about it because that world of earning a living, doing that kind of thing is largely gone away. I mean, it's still there. I still encounter that, but it's quite a bit different
Yeah.
than when I started out.
Yeah. So when you started out, um, reading wasn't as critical because you needed to have a big ear.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was critical. I didn't know how to read until I was an adult, basically. Yeah. So so all my friends are musical geniuses whose parents are also musical geniuses, and then
Oh,
there's me. I kind of just kind of keep stumbling forward here. so
yeah.
I worked really really hard at it, and as everybody knows, it's akin to learning a language. It's so much easier to learn a language when you're 7 years old than
Right.
it is to learn when you're 17 or 27. So and that's the issue, and it kind of it's probably true of a lot of instruments, but certainly for bass players I've encountered, particularly in my teaching capacity, so many people that come in and they play great, and they've rehearsed a mantra that I don't read, I can't read. I play
Mhm.
great, I can do this, but it's like, and it's largely psychological because you can read. It's very skill.
So,
Skill.
how much, once you learn to read,
Mhm.
how much does it help to then not look at the music? You know what I mean? Once you learn to read and then you're getting where it's going, then you open up your ears.
Oh yeah, as soon as you can get off the page, the sooner you can get off the page, the better. With certain musics, like I play with John DeVersa, I've been playing with an amazing trumpet player and composer named Dan Rosenboom, um, and he did this. His music is super complex, and it's hard. It's hard to get your face out of the page. It's just we don't we were actually out in February supporting this new record he did, which was really exciting. The drummer, for you drummers, it was Gary Novak. There's a
Yeah.
really, yeah, it's pretty great. Also, sometimes Zach Danziger plays with him, and yeah, it was just still it was great to get to play that music because it's very complex. Enough nights in a row where you begin to really retain it and get off the page and own it in a different way.
Mm.
But it's fine. It's I found it easier when I was younger. Now I have so much going on and so many responsibilities and so many different uh, uh, avenues that I'm pursuing that that to invest the time to memorize and so many bands I'm in to invest the time to memorize that many sets of music.
Mm.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, when we talked last week about
Mhm.
drummers. I think what what is your take on drummers? Let's say if I was teaching the drum class and I said, I want you to come in and talk to my drummers. What would you want to teach drummers about bass players?
About bass players.
Or
Hmm.
what you need from a drummer as a
You
bass
know, okay. So,
because
yeah, I mean, it's in a way, it's in a way a very simple question, but it's a very profound question because on that hinges just all of it, and it's. I think if there was, if all things being equal, if we're talking about a group of people that have, they have musical gifting, they have experience and education, and they have a pocket,
right.
then what then separates one from another, or 1 out of 10, or 1 out of 50? What is that thing? And that extra 5% or 4% or whatever, however you want to identify that. And for me, it's always listening,
Mm.
listening, the ability to take all those things that I just identified and allow your your listening abilities to supersede all of that. And listening, and I would say also, choices. There's a wonderful bass player, one of the Kings, Abraham Laboriel, and
Mm.
he was. I heard him talking about a guy. I heard him in a clinic, and he said about this guy. He said he makes good choices. And it just at some point after you've done if you've done all the stuff you're supposed to do, then it comes down to your listening and your choices, and those are critical things. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I were to sort of rephrase, so if you play one note here and then a quarter note later, you play up here,
Hmm.
what you play in between would be the choices you make that makes it different. I mean,
Sure. Yes, and choices of how to play the note, choices of the way that you react or respond. I mean, even if I'm doing a track, I was doing this track for Chris Robins's record, and just yesterday, and it just even the way I responded to certain things that were happening. It's kind of like a pop tune that had a solo in the middle of it, right? And
mhm.
the solo was kind of shifted gears and was more open. And even with something static like a pre-recorded track, still I'm reacting, still I'm making choices, still I'm making decisions that will either help the whole kind of come together or not.
Mm.
And so yeah, it's pretty interesting. It definitely separates the wheat from the chaff as far as musicians go. And that's just my opinion, but that is
Right.
my opinion. Yeah.
Well, and then when you with all of the different drummers you play with, then they all have different feels. And I've had this discussion with drummers and bass players a lot. Where when you sit down and play, have you ever sat down with somebody that's great, but locking with them is a little uncomfortable? And where do you give and where do you take? You know,
Hmm.
when you try to lock the grooves. Does that make sense?
It does. At this point in my life, I don't really encounter much playing with people where it doesn't lock. It's more like right now it's like what kind of lock, and also
Right.
some drummers are just kind of my way or the highway, and it's the hallmark of a great drummer, honestly.
Mm.
Um, uh, uh, at the same time, they're the kind of the openness factor, like how open they are. Gives me a maybe an avenue into influencing things in a certain kind of way. Um, so I'll give you an example. So like in playing with Russ, I've been playing with Russ Miller for a long time, and it's bro, it's wide.
Yeah.
It's so great, and so it's the space between those notes, the how of his execution, and what's informing that, and kind of if you it's to a philosophical remark in a way, but why is he doing that at that moment in time? Those all help me to kind of fit with him and relate to him, but it's definitely sitting. And then like in John DeVerse's band, there's a incredible drummer named Gene Coy, and we've been now playing for I don't know 13 years together, maybe a little longer. Phenomenal, phenomenal musician, but he's maybe just he's not sitting back quite as far. It's a little more uh, informed by other things, and he's like a good bit younger than me. So that rhythm section when I joined that band, it was like I was definitely it was funny. I was always the youngest dude wherever, and now the time goes on, and I'm one of the older guys on the scene. Interacting that way. Uh, but it's very different, his placement and the way that he interprets time and space, um, and pocket. I'm kind of a long answer. I'm sorry, but
Oh,
I find it endlessly fascinating. So we
right.
were talking about Dave Garibaldi earlier. Compare with Russ Miller. Compare with Gene Coy. Compare with whoever. Um, uh, yeah, I don't. It's funny. I finally got past that thing where I was like making it happen. I mean, that should be musically generated from your being, right? That it's you're generating it when you're playing. It shouldn't be a thought. And when I was a younger player, of course, you're trying to make it happen or try to fit in and yeah, I'd rather just if something really isn't working, I'd rather just be with people where I fit and where we have agreement, right?
Right. Well, most of the guys that we're talking about now, at once you get to a certain level, you just find ways you communicate and you just play. And the nuances that we're discussing are more for a younger guy that's trying to think, wow, what happens when this happens, and they're
Right.
finding a way to play. Uh,
Hmm.
but uh, what it do you find it fascinating though when you're playing with all the guys that you play with and get to play with to be able to approach a song differently because of how they're playing and how their feel is and everything?
Absolutely. And for me, I mean, there are certain people that can just marshal their will, and they put their thing there, and here it is, and I'm very much the opposite. Just my personality and my approach, and well, whatever's gone into it all. The chemistry is incredibly important. That's what So the chemistry of Russ's trio, the chemistry of Diverse's bands. He also has a small band, and those are and I could go I could keep listing groups. The chemistry of Dan Rosenboom's bands.
Mm.
All I respond differently to the notes, but kind of to the space. And each situation affords me a different kind of expression, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, I noticed something about Russ's playing when I was listening to that last record. And I noticed this a bit too when he did his Conversations record,
Oh yeah.
Arrival, where he trades stuff with other drummers.
Hmm.
When he plays fills, he leaves space more than what I'm used to hearing. He goes blah 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 blah, and there'd be space where other drummers just take the whole time. And I thought it was interesting that he leaves space in between some of his fills. Do you Is that something that he does a lot that you
Uh,
notice?
it is, and I think it's absolutely intentional. I know because we talk a lot about this kind of stuff, and
Mm.
it's what so it's in this day and age. I mean, I don't know if how much you're on Instagram, but I mean, it's drum solo festival. I mean, it's astounding,
Yeah.
and it's astounding the growth. Kind of, I mean, if I think if you trace it back to the kind of the the gospel chops scene coming, and everything that's followed it, it's just lit the world on drumming world on fire, and it's amazing, but it can be exhausting, drummers.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, you know, you know, a straight diet of chocolate cake 24/7. Yeah, doesn't work. But anyway, to your question, yeah, Russ, I think has a great sensibility, as do all the guys I've spoken about tonight.
Right.
About leaving space,
Right.
about making those kinds of choices, because of what it communicates. And in a way, it's the same thing. Be the same thing as going to the movies with some guy, and he brings along his friend who talks the entire movie. You're trying to watch the movie. The guy's talking. He's talking brilliant stuff, but it's yeah,
Right.
yeah. you know.
And what about here's another thing that Russ and I talked about is dynamics.
Oh
And since I've been doing sound,
yeah. Hmm.
uh, one thing, especially in Los Angeles, for a lot of gigs I was doing sound for, the thing that I did have been able to wrap my head around is all the drummers that just have to just play loud all the time. And I thought maybe it was an LA thing that when they get out on some of the gigs that I do, uh,
Hmm.
that they're always just hitting because the drums sound good when you really hit them hard. They do sound good, but rarely did I ever find somebody that could just they just play out a whisper. And then
Hmm.
one gig I was doing sound and Walter Rodriguez was playing.
Oh yeah.
And I said, they're telling us that they're going to call the police if because it's too loud. And he instantly went and he was playing at a whisper, but the groove stayed exactly the same.
Hmm.
And I'm going, whoa, how cool is that? do, uh, so do bass players have issues like that on occasion, like young kids that really want to just play? You know what I'm getting at?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I did first to say, Walter's he's a bad boy, and
Right.
he's a remarkable musician, and that's why he can do that, and to play quietly with intensity and not not change the tempo, not change the forward momentum, not change the groove. That's that's uh that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. And yeah, sure. Bass players have that. Drummers, by virtue of the fact that they're breaking up the time with four limbs, they have a lot of control. They have a lot of control over dynamics. So if you're playing as a bass player, at least from my experience, so if I'm playing dynamically, and the particularly the drummer is not with me, it doesn't really matter. But really, if you think about playing a song, think of them as everything you're doing as a song, then everything can change, like that. Actually, when you're thinking about how you're treating, the verse and the chorus and the bridge, and do you have a does a song have a point or a destination in mind? Is there an arrival point? Um, yeah, and so that again, if you don't have a partner as a bass player in the drummer,
Mm.
that's pretty hard to achieve.
Well, let me ask you this too about and I never know how these interviews are going to go. That these
Right.
talks, it just kind of what you say makes me think of something. Do you think about building a song? When I was a kid, learning how to play a song, just even a pop song, I was told you need to build the song. Like you add fills, maybe not the first bridge, but the
Hmm.
bridge you play something, and then by the end of the song you build songs musically and come down on the verse and that sort of thing, and even in bebop, that sort of thing. Do you think along those kinds of terms sometimes when you're playing, building songs and the people you're around from that kind of perspective?
Yeah, yeah. Do I think about building the song?
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
that
sorry.
you
Maybe ask that again. Yeah.
does it just naturally happen now that you're playing a lot that you build a song or behind a soloist, for example, as they build the solo, you build
Mhm,
with them.
mhm.
Um,
Well, yeah, yeah, sure, but and there's all different ways to go on that, but yes, absolutely. You want to build the song. Some, some, not everything is like that, right? So there could be something that's more of a more static, or it could be a zone. It's more of a mood or a vibe. In which case, it doesn't have a big arrival point. Or what do you do with there are different forms of that. Are you familiar? Well, are you familiar with Mark Juliana? The incredible drummer.
hmm,
Well, anyway, so he's he has this uh, he has this approach beat music, and it's pretty. He's pretty incredible. I've seen him perform many times, but it's a completely other kind of way relative to the kind of music we're talking about, of kind of structuring things, and the building. It does happen. It just happens in a completely different kind of a way. So I guess, yeah, building always. Just you kind of have to be aware of, kind of know what room you're in. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know where these questions come from. It's just stuff that
You're channeling something.
I'm channeling. Yeah, I just sometimes when I get into a conversation about rhythms and songs and constructing grooves and that sort of thing, I start thinking about that sort of thing, and you also were saying that you do a lot of world music and Brazilian, Peruvian, Latin stuff. And I know this last thing you did with Russ had a lot of different flavors on it too. What Tell me a little bit about all of that world compared to the other stuff we've been talking about.
Oh, yeah. It's yeah, I just love it. I just love being in a room with a bunch of people that I don't know. I don't speak their language. I don't know what they're saying, and we're making music together. That to me is just one of the most beautiful things that there is, really. And very, I moved a lot when I was growing up, around the country, actually, and wound up started on the East Coast, wound up back there before coming to Cali. And I was just always dealing with different music and different people. It was just kind of how my life unfolded. And early on, at the time that wishful thinking started, I was playing with an Indian violinist named L. Subramaniam, and he had a whole crew of people, Indian percussionists and musicians that we would play with. Also, by the way, for I got to record a record with Tony Williams,
Mm,
which which was pretty darn exciting. If you guys know who that is, was
what
one of
was
the all-time greats.
Not to interrupt your
Yeah.
story, but what was that experience like working with Tony?
Oh, it was incredible. And I've told this story before, but I actually went up to the San Francisco Bay Area from LA, and we were recording at Fantasy Studios. It's a big was it I don't know if it's there any longer, but
Yeah.
Subramaniam says to me, "Yeah, come up. We're going to record this record." And I was just super thrilled. And he said, "There's a guy Tony's going to play drums." I was like, "Oh, okay, like whatever." I didn't care. I'm there. I'm doing a record. And I got there super early, and I walk into the studio, and there's Tony was famous for playing a canary yellow Gretsch drum set. And
Yeah.
I get to Fantasy, and I walk in really early, I'm the first guy there, and there's this yellow Gretsch drum set, and I'm thinking, oh God, how lame is this? The guy's name is Tony, and he's playing a yellow Gretsch drum set like Tony Williams. Oh, wow, bruh, obvious, Captain Obvious. And I turn around, and in walks Tony Williams, and my jaw
Oh,
drops. And I'm gonna have to say, I was 20 years old. I mean, I was so good. I had no idea. I would have blown my mind before. I would have blown my mind, thinking about it ahead of time. So, and I got to anyway. We hung out for 3 days and recorded, and um, not honestly not the greatest music. The soloing is phenomenal. The songs maybe not so much, but it was just a beautiful experience. And he was very cool with me. So,
Hmm.
he was very gracious, and I was clearly very green. So I'm eternally grateful. Thank you, Tony, for just being cool with me and inviting me in the room. Yeah, it was
Man.
pretty pretty neat. Anyway,
Yeah. So, well,
what
that,
was I saying? Oh yeah, so world music. So yeah, I was just always attracted to making music with people from other places, and I got so Russ's record is definitely more. This last record is Afro Caribbean, you know,
yeah.
influence, Cuban, and the record before was more Brazilian, and I did a lot of Brazilian music, particularly, and spent 20 years playing with a great Brazilian composer, Dori Caymmi.
Okay.
So there may be some fans out there, and it's just sublime. We did a bunch of records, had some Grammy nominated records with him, which was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Um, for a gringo to get a Latin Grammy nomination with be on a record that was nominated that way was really very there was just very it was very rewarding. Yeah, and I'm super. I love African music, and I've been over to Africa a couple 3 times and checked that out, and yeah, I'm all about it.
Can I ask you, how would you, if you needed to describe to me how a samba should be played, is there a way you could describe the a feel of a samba to me? Because somebody once told me that um, that the second note has to be stronger than the first note, like on the bass drum. Like
Hmm.
the first note is sort of a ghosted almost. Is that is how do you am I on the right track? Could that be
Yeah, I think you are on the right track. I mean, it's unbelievably hard to verbalize. I spent a lot of time in the shed just checking out all those guys. I through Gary Meek and Mike Shapiro, I met Ayrto, and I played for a while with Ayrto, and then uh, Dori, of course, and a whole bunch of other Brazilian transplants that were in LA. So LA was the great place to be because all these folks were showing up, and I was willing, and they needed somebody. As far as the feel goes, it's incredibly hard to verbalize, but I will say that there's certainly an American way to play samba, which is in four, dun, 3, 4, 1, doom, da, doom, da, doom, and
oh
it's really the swing is two, and that's about yeah. There's so much to the swing of it that you just have to get down and really study the history of it and get with it. And I was fortunate to go there with wishful thinking early on in 1986. We
mm,
went there, and then I went again back again with with a great singer Kevin Lettow. She had this band with Doree and Russ Ferrante, and myself and Mike Shapiro, and just those experiences, experiencing the culture and the people and eating the food, and that kind of somehow that helps you put it all together, in my
mm,
opinion.
yeah. Somebody told me once, if you really want to learn how to play samba, when you think of those guys when they grow up, that's what they grow up playing. He said, try to get into the mind of the people and where they live and what their culture is. Try to think of maybe how they're thinking and feeling, and that might help. And I guess maybe going there would be a good way to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think.
It,
Yeah.
everything rubs off a little bit, I think, a little bit. Um, but you mentioned Russ. So I had Bill Champlin on the show
Oh,
and talked to him, and Bill was hands down. He said the two best piano players he ever worked with in terms of feel were Joe Sample and Russ Ferrante. So how from all of the gigs that you did, I'm imagining almost everybody like once you're at a certain level, everybody's got great feels, but was how was it working with Russ on that gig?
It's absolutely spectacular. He's a spectacular musician,
Yeah,
and so understated, but he's got it all, and he's got this great pocket, right? And
yeah.
with that singer Kevin Lettow, he did a ton of arrangements. We did several records together
Mm.
for her. It was a joy to be with him. It's just incredible.
Yeah. So, I'm just looking. So you moved to Los Angeles in what, 83 or something, or around then, early
Yeah,
80s?
early
And
'80s.
so you've been here for a while, and I look at all of your discography on your website, and your link to your website is up here underneath in case somebody ever wants to
Oh, cool.
um, get in touch with you for a lesson or anything. But the amount of records and things that you've played on, and the different styles. Am I Is this one record? Is this a country record? The ladies, the triplets with the guitar.
Oh my God! Wow. That that is no. They were. That's a pop record. It's like power pop, and I don't
Really?
know if you. God, that's so long ago. The drummer was Mike Baird. Do you know who Mike Baird is?
Only
He
by
was,
name.
he was an LA session guy, heavy guy, and then he
Oh,
wound up in Journey,
yeah.
and I can't remember who played. Dean Parks played guitar on that.
Oh,
Yeah,
guitar player.
but yeah, it's straight up eighth note power pop rock. Yeah, it's just just a thing. It's a,
Yeah.
a day in the life, so to speak. I did want to just you mentioned keyboard players and feel, and I for there was a time that I was playing with this great songwriter named Michael Ruff, and through him I met Sheryl Crow when Sheryl Crow was first starting out, and she had a band with Greg Fillinganes playing keyboards,
Oh,
and that is like almost like nothing else. It's that awesome. And earlier in the show we were talking about stuff. So I was you would imagine I'm a major Richard T fan.
yes,
Yeah,
me too.
major. Uh,
Too.
anyway, fast forward to getting standing next to Greg Fillinganes. But what am I doing here? And just that there's that guy is just all music. It's
It just
been many years since I played with it, but it's just it's just still with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I've worked with a few people where they're like that, and my description is that it's just angelic or something. There's just something that channels through them, and you just can't describe it. It just happens. It just
That'll work. That works for me.
they'll play something. You're like, what was that? Where'd that come from? Oh man. But I had another question I wanted to ask you, but now I got off on trying to imagine that kind of scenario where the guy's just so good. Um, I was looking at another record that I was going to ask you about, and it'll come up. But this is, I wanted to play this just because I want to give another idea of you playing. And this is off of the John DeVersa record. I just want to
Mhm.
play a little bit of this because uh, it's a really fast swing song, almost bebop, I think.
Okay.
So let's see what this sounds like.
Oh, geez.
All right. So, oh, that's great. That's so different than everything we've talked about already.
Right.
Completely. And that the feel of that is way more on top of the beat, it seems.
Mhm.
Kind of pushes ahead a little bit.
Yeah, which is how I prefer that music to be. Yeah, so
Yeah.
ride cymbal, bass, who's leading. But yeah, I in that sense, I'm not very West Coast in my taste. Um, I prefer, I just prefer a different way. That's Gene Coy playing drums, and by the way, Bob Mincer playing sax, and Zane Carney on guitar, and Joe Bagg playing piano or organ. I couldn't remember, but yeah, killing lineup.
Right. Well, now I remember what I was going to say because of all of the scope of all of the music you've done since you've
Mhm,
been here. You've worked with almost everybody that, as a music fan and of jazz and all of that, and musicians, I'm going, holy shit. I mean, Bob Mincer, Gary Meek, Russ Ferrante, Russ Miller. I mean, all the different records, and I'm going, man, uh, you know, and I think when I talk to people sometimes, I'm so fan struck just of because I'm a fan of
mhm.
music and I don't really know what to say sometimes. I met Herbie Hancock
Ooh.
and I said I first saw you when you released the Manchild album. You remember when albums used to come out and the band would tour, they would play the album. And
Mhm,
it would usually start, the opening song would be the opening song of the album.
mhm,
So so I said, yeah, it was that Guitar Watson song on Manchild. That was what he goes, yeah, it was Rick down. He starts singing the guitar
oh,
part. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. And
is that Hang Up Your Hang-Ups?
yeah. Da 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 da.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, man. So, did you ever check that out on, VSOP Live? It's like there's like 3 versions of Herbie's bands, and, excuse me, I gotta just change this air conditioning here. Um, yeah, check it out. It's just, James Levi playing drums, and it's, I think, like Walla Watson and who else? Who was the other guitar player? That's killing. Paul Jackson.
Yeah, I gotta watch it, man, because I mean that's what I grew up listening to, and he made me feel at ease the minute he did that. I'm like,
Uh,
that's really cool. So, anything else that's coming up that you're going to be working on that I might be able to check out, or any new records coming out sometime soon?
Sure. There is a new Zane Carney record coming out. So he's an incredible guitar player. Zane and I and Gene Coy, and of course Russ's record just came out, and Dan Rosenboom's record came out not that long ago, and that's called "Absurd in the Anthropocene," which is it's a mouthful, but
Yeah.
it's if you like adventure, uh, yeah, you'll love this.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's a great cast of guys, and yeah, there's like let's see, there's just a lot of cool projects. I haven't been in this COVID time, I really haven't been doing any kind of big records, but making a lot of music. So I'm recording wise. So I'm happy about that.
Uh, you know, I'm wondering, and other people have mentioned that because of how we're all sort of shut in and shut down, and everybody's looking at ways getting creative, maybe there's going to be a huge wave of creativity come out of this time, because what else are we going to do? So maybe there'll be a whole bunch of new music starting to come out, all new.
I am hopeful.
Do you write any music? Do you write any songs?
I do some. I probably have contributed more as an arranger, and do a bit of producing. I'm producing a record, this live record of Dori Caymmi's. He actually went back to Brazil, so I'm
Mm.
in the midst of producing that. And actually, I did some. I wrote. I've done some CCM stuff, and so I have a co-write with a well-known writer and artist in that realm, Tommy Walker. But for a long time, I played with Andy Summers. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, yeah, from the
The
Police.
guitar player of the Police, and so we had actually a parade of drummers through that situation. But for about a year, we had a band and we wrote. It never really saw the light of day, but
Mhm.
I did a lot of writing then, and then not so much these days. But you never know what's going to happen.
Well, we've clocked in right at an hour.
Okay,
I mean, we don't have to stop, but I don't want to keep you real long. I mean, I just really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and you know, it's more of a let's just talk about music than it is a real interview, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
oh, Jeff, thank you so much for the invite. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no, no, and you know, if a student watches, and this is the thing
Mm,
that I've learned, the kind of stuff that we talk about is if a student's watching, he can go, oh, that's cool. There's little nuggets and stuff that come out that people can pick up on and learn just through this course of a conversation.
mm.
Uh, Especially when talking about feel and all that sort of thing, and it's always good for students to hear that. And I'm happy that the school is going to keep going and you're getting it worked out.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Phew. You know, at some point we'll all look back and like, God, you remember 2020? Nah,
I'm thinking I'm wanting to forget it.
right? It's going to go, yeah, 2019, 2021. Yeah,
Though there have been so many gifts in the midst of it all, just some amazing connections with people and time to reflect and slow down. I mean, I keep a pretty busy pace, and this has uh, slowed me down. And I got I wiped out on my mountain bike last week, so that slowed me down.
is that
And
what your finger? Did you
no, I'm actually a lifelong swimmer, and I busted the tip of my finger in the pool in a completely freak accident. And I hadn't been swimming because they shut all the pools down. So I went back, and I just a freak accident. So this is 2 months of recouping, and I can play. I can't play fast, so that's good, right? I mean,
I was, I was
all the drummers can play all the fills they want. I can just kind of play some blown notes, and there you go.
yeah, just
Everybody's happy.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Jerry, and spending the time with me. And I'll play a little bit more of Russ's record to take us out. Um,
Excellent. What
and
do you got? What do you got queued up there? Which one?
let's see what this is. Let's listen. Oh, is that what we started with? I think that's the same song.
Might
No?
be. Yeah.
Do you have one that do you have a different one I should play?
Uh, well, number five has a lot going on. That could be fun.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good closer.
All right. I like it.
Thank you, Jerry.
Jeff, thanks so much.
Right.
Thanks everybody out there for listening.
All right.
Hit me up and we'll talk. All right, everyone. Be safe. Thanks, Jeff.